intersection of city, light, decoloniality, and subversivity opens a complex field of exploration where themes of urbanism, power dynamics, colonial histories, and cultural representations are involved. These intersections forces a rethinking of the urban environment as not just a space of habitation, but as a site of power, memory, and contested history. I will explore the interplay between these elements through a series of perspectives: the colonial imprint on urban spaces and its ongoing legacy in post-colonial cities, the role of light in urban landscapes as a medium of control and as a symbol of power, and the potential of artistic and cultural practices in fostering decolonial imageries and revisioning urban features. Colonialism was not only about the exploitation of resources and people, but also about the imposition of spatial and ideological orders. The construction of cities in colonized territory was a direct manifestation of this imposition. Through urban planning and architecture, colonial power sought to create spaces that reflect their own worldviews, ideologies, and hierarchies. These cities were often designed to reinforce the social, racial, and economical division of the colonized society. The use of light in urban environments is far from neutral. In colonial cities, the control of light, both in terms of physical illumination and in terms of a symbolic representation, was a key instrument of power. In colonial cities, the introduction of modern lighting technologies was often framed as a symbol of progress and development. The colonizers controlled not only the material infrastructure of lighting, such as street lamps, electronic grids, or also the symbolic meaning of light, differencing between the civilized and the uncivilized. The use of light as a form of control is also evident in the way in which it was used to surveil the indigenous population, where lit areas were often seen as colonizer spaces, while unlit, shadowy areas were seen as spaces of danger and subversion. The ability to control light was thus intertwined with the ability to control space and people. In the post-colonial context, the legacy of colonial lighting practices and their impact on urban inequalities persists. Many former colonial cities still exhibit deep contrast in terms of lighting infrastructure between the wealthy upper-class areas and the poorer working-class neighborhoods. This raises important questions about the role of lighting in perpetuating urban inequalities and how light practices can be decolonized to create more equitable cities. Decolonization of urban spaces involve not just the physical reconstructing of the city, but also a rethinking of the ways in which cities are imagined, represented, and experienced. This requires a critical engagement with the colonial histories that have shaped urban landscaping and reimagining of urban futures that are more inclusive and equitable. One way in which this progress is taking place is through artistic and cultural practices that challenge dominant colonial narratives and offer new ways of seeing and experiencing the city. Artists, architects, and urban planners are increasingly engaging with the question of how to decolonize urban space and create cities that reflect the diverse experience and histories of their inhabitants. Artistic practices that challenge colonial urbanism often involve reimagining the city as a space of resistance and transformation. Artists like Laszlo Moholy-Nagy challenge conventional narratives of the city, exploring themes of speed, light, and technological progress. He approached the city as a space of constant motion and transformation. In his work, Dynamic of the Metropolis, he experimented with photographic techniques to capture the rapidly changing urban environment, particularly in cities like Berlin. His photomontages and films depicted the city as a space where technology, light, and human activity intersected, creating a sense of constant dynamism. Moholy-Nagy focused on the city's kinetic energy, and his intersection with technology proceeded many of today's discussion around the idea of a smart city or urban mobility and the use of light in urban planning. His work captured the fragmentation and speed of modern urban life, but is also pointed to the possibility of new form of visual and spatial organization. In particular, his use of light and photography as a medium to reflect on the city can be seen as an early artistic exploration on how urban lighting practices influence not only the aesthetic experience, but also the social interaction. His emphasis on collective visual experience, how people collectively experience and engage in urban spacing, is seeking to reclaim public spaces. De-Coloniality as a concept seeks to dismantle the colonial structures that continue to shape many aspects of modern life, including urban spaces. In cities that were once colonized, the spatial organization, architecture, and even lighting installation often reflect colonial legacies. The distribution of light in a city thus become a reflection of social inequalities rooted in histories of colonialism and segregation. Moholy-Nagy's experiments with light provide a framework for considering how lighting practices can be decolonized. He understood light as a powerful tool of both perception and control, capable of shaping how people experience the urban environment. In the context of decoloniality, rethinking how light is distributed in the city becomes crucial. Urban lighting practices can either reinforce existing inequalities or contribute to the creation of a more inclusive and just spaces. The existing disparities not only reflect economic inequalities, but also constitute the colonial logic of dividing urban space along racial and ethnical lines, reinforcing the marginalization of already disadvantaged communities, limiting their access to public space and perpetuating feeling of exclusion and insecurities. Decolonizing urban lighting practices requires an acknowledgement of these historical inequities and a commitment to redistributing resources. Additionally, by using light in creative and subversive ways, artists and urban designers can challenge the symbolic power of colonial architecture and monuments, illuminate these spaces in ways that disrupt their traditional meaning and open up new forms of interpretation. Moholy-Nagy's artistic practice was characterized by a desire to subvert established norms and create new ways of seeing and understanding the world. His experiments with light, movement, and technology can be seen as a form of artistic subversion and an attempt to break down the rigid structure of perception that shaped urban life in the interwar period by encouraging viewers to see the city in a new way. His work challenged the dominant narrative of the time, which often framed the city as a space of order, progress, and control. This subversive potential of the art is particularly relevant when considering how urban spaces can be reimagined in the context of decolonization. Just as Moholy-Nagy used light to challenge visual representation of the city, contemporary artists can use light and other mediums to challenge the spatial and symbolic hierarchies that continue to define many urban environments. One example of such subversive artistic practice is the use of projection mapping, where a light is used to project images or text onto buildings, monuments, or other urban structures. By projecting alternative narratives or subversive imagery, artists can disrupt the traditional meaning associated with these spaces and open up new possibility for those of how they are understood and experienced. This form of artistic intervention has the potential to shift power dynamics in the city. In this sense, one example is the projection made by Krzysztof Wodiczko on the AT&T long-line buildings in New York Financial District 4 days before the presidential election in '84. The work represented an image of the hand of Ronald Reagan in an official meeting context, wearing an elegant white shirt and being surprised in the position of concluding an agreement. The artist's intention was to reveal Ronald Reagan's intention to support the financial sector despite of his populist discourse. More than this, artistic practices that engage with light can foster collective action and solidarity by creating shared experiences in public spaces. For example, community-based lighting project has involved residents in the design and implementation process, and this can help democratize the use of light in the city, ensuring that it reflects the need and desire of all citizens rather than just those in a position of power. This kind of project can help to build a sense of community and belongings, fostering empathy and solidarity among diverse urban population. Moholy-Nagy's work encourages us to think about the city as a space of constant flux, shaped by light, movement, and technology. In the context of decoloniality, this vision of the city as a space of transformation offers valuable insight into how urban environment can be reimagined in ways that reflects the need and aspiration of all citizens rather than just those in a position of power. By engaging with light as a medium of both perception and control, his work highlights the importance of considering how lighting practices shape the experience of urban spaces. In many ways, light is a symbol of visibility and recognition. Those who control light in the city control who is seen and who remain in the shadow. In a post-colonial context, rethinking how light is used in the city becomes a crucial aspect of the broader process of decolonization, and it involves making marginalized community visible and created spaces where they can be safe and included. The legacy of interwar artistic practices continues to inspire contemporary efforts to challenge dominant narratives of the city and reimagine urban futures. Today, artists, architects, and urban planners are drawing on the insights of figures such as Laszlo Moholy-Nagy to create urban environments that are more inclusive and sustainable. In the context of decolonization, these interwar movements provide useful framework for thinking about how to dismantle the colonial legacies embedded in urban spaces. Just as Laszlo Moholy uses light and transparency to explore new ways of seeing of the city, contemporary artists are using light installation and public art to challenge the spatial hierarchies inherited from colonial rule. Similarly, the Bauhaus emphasis on collective living and functional design resonate with current effort to create affordable houses and public spaces that promote social inclusion. Projects like Participatory City, an initiative from London, which seeks to create spaces for collective action and shared experiences, draw directly from the Bauhaus belief in the social and responsibility of architecture and design. In conclusion, the artistic practices of the interwar period offer valuable lessons for contemporary efforts to reimagine urban future by challenging dominant narratives of the city and exploring new ways of seeing, experiencing, and inhabiting urban spaces. Artists provide important insight into how city can become more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable, whether through the use of light, architecture, performance, or urban design. These artistic practices continue to inspire collective action and foster empathy in the post-colonial metropolis. Thank you very much.